What's up guys, it's Manga Time once again here to bring you my review of Bleach 633 Friend 3. And this looks to be the end of the flashback, which is a bit unfortunate actually, because I was really hoping this would be our big Quincy flashback about 1,000 years ago. However, I'm optimistic, and the fact that Kubo has even bothered to visit this time period at all tells me that we will eventually get that big flashback that shows us the original Gotei, etc., Yamamoto versus Yhwach, etc., etc. So for now we make do with what we've got, basically, and what we've got is good. So it starts with Yhwach saying, I know who you are, Yhwach and Hashwalth, my other half. And basically the whole chapter is just Yhwach explaining what the hell Hashwalth actually is. And this brings up quite a few interesting points, actually, about the series as a whole, which I'll get into in a second. So basically, immediately Yhwach invites him into the Sternritter, obviously much to Bazz-B's chagrin. And of course, Argola and Hubert are kind of like, what the hell's going on here? And so basically, Bazz-B is strangely, maybe not strangely, but he's oddly jealous of Hashwalth. Despite the fact that he was a genius, Hashwalth was chosen, even though he knows nothing about being a Quincy. And it's interesting because like Hashwalth is clearly still very dependent at this point in time. He turns around to Bazz-B and he's like, well, what do I do? What do I do? And he's clearly still very dependent. That changes at the end of this chapter. Bazz-B kind of staring at him like angrily. Kubo's so good at drawing. In general, like his face he's incredible at. Bazz-B's looking at Hashwalth with like an anger, but it's kind of mixed with the disbelief, and he's kind of just like, what? And but you can tell he's really pissed off as well. And so we then get an inner monologue of Bazz-B, and he's like, we were both supposed to get close to Yhwach and kill him together. I was the gifted one, but why is it you that was chosen? You go. And it's like Bazz-B's kind of almost got this kind of, he still hates Yhwach, but he's now got this resentment towards Hashwalth, as though Hashwalth has betrayed him at this point, although he hasn't, but he does later on, basically. And Hashwalth is now like, stop it, Baz, don't look at me like that, why won't you just be happy for me? Interesting that Hashwalth thinks that Bazz-B should be happy for him. And I think this all stems from Hashwalth's kind of abusive uncle that we got in the first chapter of this flashback, and that plays into it a bit more later on as well. So Yhwach says to Argola, or Hubert, whichever one, return to the castle and bring me a cart, I'll be taking this boy back with me. And as they prepare to do that, Hashwalth suddenly shouts out, he's like, he says to Yhwach, I think you must have got it all wrong. And this is good because despite the fact that Hashwalth wants this newfound father figure in Yhwach, and as far as we're concerned, he's grateful to Yhwach for having killed his uncle in the fire, despite that, he still wants to give Bazz-B the chance that he thinks Bazz-B deserves, although that does go out the window pretty quickly. However, Argola is like, what do you think you're doing? And Argola's got a cool sword, man. It looks like Tesla's sword. Yeah, it's awesome. It's got the whole kind of curved handle and everything. It looks really cool. But, so Argola's basically like, know your place. But Hashwalth still speaks up. And this is, like, good character development for Hashwalth at this point in the series, because he's very, very, very timid and not outspoken at all in this flashback. But now he's even standing up to Yhwach, of all people, because he clearly believes that Bazz-B deserves the chance to get his revenge. And so, he's like, I don't have anything that makes me good enough to become a Quincy, but I can't make my own bow and arrow, but Bazz-B over there would be a much better choice compared to me. Bazz-B doesn't like him doing this for some reason, but it doesn't really matter because Yhwach gets off his horse, and basically we then see that he does indeed have the Almighty activated, like I thought he did. Interestingly, however, he only seems to have pupils in the one eye, so either that means that this Almighty is really weak compared to the new one, or something that like it's incomplete or something. But he says, it's exactly as I've seen. You are unaware of your own powers, that's all it is. And then now Yhwach explains what Hashwalth is, basically. And basically, he is just like Yhwach. He's a Quincy with the power of giving and sharing. So he can't, and apparently it's 200, every 200 years, a Quincy of similar powers is born like Yhwach. But there hasn't been one up until now. And so basically, Bazz-B's kind of like, what the hell? So Yhwach's been alive 200 years. And, like, he's realizing that something is definitely off with this guy. But basically, Yhwach then explains what Hashwalth is. Hashwalth cannot absorb and use the reishi around him. However, he can give out power. And it's very interesting that he seems to be able to give power that he doesn't have. But, yeah. Anyway, Yhwach then says that he's gained the power to be able to take it back afterwards. Which we already know that. But yeah, Hashwalth can't do that. Hashwalth just gives out at the moment. And so basically, Yhwach turns to Bazz-B and he's like, redhead one, I'm sure you've noticed that your powers have been growing a lot while you've been around him. And then being typical Yhwach, he's a complete dick about it. And he's like, did you honestly think it was your own power? No, you should be grateful to Hashwalth, because without him, you'd be a piece of dirt, basically. Which is pretty rough. Probably not what Bazz-B wants to hear right now. But before we move on, I think it's very interesting that Hashwalth has this giving and sharing ability as well. And I think there might be some kind of parallel going on here between Ichigo and Uryu as well. We know that Ichigo has this same giving and sharing power. Now, is he the same as Yhwach and Hashwalth? I'm not entirely sure, but we do know that being around Ichigo awakened Chad and Orahime's abilities. Now, I know that was kind of retconned to be the Hogyoku, but I don't think there's any reason why Aizen couldn't have been wrong for like a second time, and for Kubo to go the route of Ichigo being this Quincy who has the giving and sharing powers, because it's not just Ichigo, it's Ginjo as well. Ginjo is the same, he has the giving and sharing powers. He can share it between substitute Shinigamis and humans, and with the Fullbringers he could share his powers as well. And so to me that seems like a big kind of coincidence that both are substitute Shinigamis, both the people who are born of a Shinigami and a human have that same ability. So I think this whole giving and sharing thing is going to become a big deal. It's possible that Uryu was made into the genius he was by being around Ichigo for so long, and this kind of parallel between Hashwalth and Bazz-B and Ichigo and Uryu might actually play out to be something big. Because they actually get paralleled later on in this chapter as well. But anyway, Yhwach puts his hand on Hashwalth's head and he's like, let's go Hashwalth, I need you with me. And that's basically the turning point for Hashwalth. He's like, oh crap, I don't want this guy to die. He could be the dad I never had, basically. He's someone who values me and he's not abusive towards me. Because, the way he says, I need you with me, which is interesting. But yeah, so Kubo again, great at drawing expressions. The way Hashwalth's eyes just change is great. Bazz-B, however, is not happy and he flips the fuck out. And he basically summons his crossbow and he's like, drop dead, Yhwach, and he fires an arrow at him. And this is remarkably similar to Hashwalth stopping Ichigo's attack, the first invasion. Hashwalth literally spins around and grabs the attack before he can get to Yhwach. This is the second parallel. Hashwalth is holding the arrow, similarly to how Ichigo held Uryu's arrow when he fell off the Soul King's palace. And obviously this is the betrayal that Bazz-B was talking about, and it's cool to see how Jugram Hashwalth, Sternritter B, was born in this exact moment. The way that he's holding the arrow, and there's just that kind of dead look on his face, that is the Hashwalth that we've come to know. And it's definitely a fast change all of a sudden, but I feel like maybe that is what would happen. Hashwalth has literally been hoping for a father figure for so long. He's never really been on board with the whole Yhwach killing thing, I don't think. Like when Bazz-B first told him about it, he was like, do I have to come along as well? And it's definitely cool to see that Hashwalth has, I honestly think, had his own agenda this whole time, pretty much. And they were obviously friends, him and Bazz-B, because he did want to give Bazz-B that chance. But, as soon as Yhwach made it pretty clear it wasn't going to happen, Hashwalth flipped pretty fast. Does this mean that Hashwalth is a bit of a fickle character? Not really. It's more that he's had a lot of hardship and now he's kind of looking for an out. But anyway, yeah, so there's a parallel between Ichigo and Uryu's fight there, but then it's also very nicely done in that we go back to the present day and Hashwalth catches his arrow, and that basically ends the fight because Bazz-B's kind of like shit, and then Hashwalth just slashes him across the chest. Really, actually is a really great end to this chapter. It's very typical Bleach. I love how they both look into each other's eyes, very kind of Aizen Gin when Gin betrayed him, and then Aizen cut him down. Kubo, of course, is a master of getting across emotion in just the eyes without saying anything. And the final panel is just fantastically drawn. Bazz-B's there with Burner Finger 3 coming off his hands, and Hashwalth just cuts him across the chest, and that's the end of that. Is Bazz-B dead? Probably not. He might be seriously wounded, but I don't think he's dead. I think I want this fight to keep going, but I'm not sure it will, because Kubo's been doing this a lot lately in the kind of battle's end after about 3 chapters in the second invasion, so obviously not all of them adhere to that rule, but a lot of them have. So I think this could be the end of this fight. I don't think Bazz-B's going to die, though. It'd be very disappointing if Bazz-B did die. We've got a lot of his story now, however, but there are some bits that still need to be filled in. We don't know how Bazz-B became a Sternritter, despite the fact that Yhwach seemed perfectly content to leave him on the dirt. So we don't know how that happened yet. If we do, I think we might find that on a potential deathbed flashback for Bazz-B, which might be disappointing. But yeah, my main takeaway from this chapter is that I like it. I like the flashback. What we got is good. I really do want Kubo to revisit this time period, though, and show us the Sternritter formation and, you know, Yhwach versus Yamamoto and all that sort of thing. I really want that to come about, and that'd be awesome. One more thing I can take away from this is, what if Hashwalth has learnt the ability to take back power? Obviously, in this chapter, Yhwach said, you know, you can't do it yet. What if he can now? What if that's how he killed Kangdu? So, you know, take away this. Kangdu's just basically a bog standard Sternritter. Hashwalth's supposed to be the Grand Master, yet apparently he couldn't cut through him. And in fact, his sword swipe seemed incredibly weak. What if that's because Hashwalth has been giving his power out this whole time to bolster the power of the Sternritters, and yet can now take it back whenever he chooses? So when he tries to cut Kangdu and he can't do anything about it, it's because he's weak as fuck. But then he takes all of his power back from Kangdu, weakening Kang and making him strong at the same time, allowing him to just cut straight through him. Again, that might play around with the whole balance idea that we've got going on, but to be honest, we haven't seen that since. So I'm not sure what Kubo's doing in terms of Hashwalth's power, but it's going to be interesting to find out nonetheless. I definitely think there's a parallel to be made here between Yhwach and Hashwalth's giving and taking abilities and the fact that Ichigo and Ginjo seem to be able to do the exact same thing. I think that's going to become pretty major, actually, later on in this arc and the story in general. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this week's review, guys. Not a lot happened in this chapter, and it does seem to be the end of the friend flashback, at least. Not a lot happened, and I kind of almost felt a little bit rushed with Hashwalth turning like he did like that. But at the same time, I think it's logical, plausible. You can definitely find a reason for it. Again, the artwork was absolutely stellar. I loved the last 2 pages of the present day fight. Really well drawn, especially the final panel was just really dynamic and awesome. I'm going to give this week's chapter a 3.5 out of 5 on my new rating scale. It was good. There wasn't a lot, though. Like, it was one of those chapters where I was about 13 pages through, and I was like, yeah, this is all we're getting this week. Which is always a little bit disappointing, I think. But, you know, what was in the chapter was very good. And it does bring good closure to Bazz-B's character and story. Hashwalth's story is definitely not over yet. But Bazz-B might be dead. I'm going to call it now. I'm going to say now that he's not dead. I could be wrong, you know, but for now I'm going to say he's not dead. So, yeah. So that's it from me this week, guys. What did you think of this week's chapter? Do you like this? What did you think of the whole friend flashback in general? Did you like it? Did you think it was kind of, you know, a well-done flashback, a well-written flashback? I think it was. It was just a tantalising look to 1,000 years ago that I hope we get more of, mostly. So yeah, guys, please subscribe to my videos if you like what you see. We really appreciate your support. And give the video a thumbs up, that'd be great. And share it with your friends as well, so that, you know, we can bring some more views around here. That'd be awesome. But until next time, guys, see ya.